How does people feel in
good,
general
but
in the UK right now or in London? Like, are everyone afraid?
no, no, not really. It's just like, and people are just sad, annoyed. I mean, you can't be really afraid. Like, people have been afraid before, but like, what is there to do? Like you can't really evade it anymore. So
Mm.
you just have to deal with it. Like, I've seen some tourists this morning and stuff. People are still going on the street. It's like normal business.
Hello, business people of the world. Today is Sunday, June 4th, 2017, and welcome to Business Tribulations, where we talk about business and economic events from around the world. Today, in news, we will discuss Trump backs out from the Paris Climate Agreement. After much deliberation, Trump decides to pull out the US from the climate agreement. We'll do a general assessment of Bitcoin and its possibilities. Adam will give us some information that has risen up in these past few months. We will talk a bit about the British election that is happening next week. We will talk about the status of the Labour Party and Conservative Party. And we will talk about a British Airways cabin crew going on strike. The British Airways cabin crew wants to go on strike from the 16th to the 19th of June to protest wages. This week, Trump wanted to, after much deliberation with people from his entourage that wanted him to stay and wanted him to exit, he decided that it was best for the US to exit the Paris Climate Agreement because it wasn't fair for the US economy in a sort of way. So this is going to be a big problem because we will be seeing if really the climate agreement was really doing something or was being useful. We know that this prompted the European and Asian governments to create a coalition to fight climate change. But let's talk a bit about the business of protecting the environment. Matthias, you wanted to say something about that.
I mean, yeah, it's a gigantic business, obviously, since all the countries have been moving towards the renewable energies, and it is a gigantic business. But I think you have more information on that, Alonso. Isn't that right?
Well, I've kind of been looking into sort of like the smaller businesses. I looked into and actually this happened in Switzerland. Like kind of like a startup that talked that was actually transforming, like cleaning up CO2 and turning it into O2 and then selling the carbon that was extracted, that was filtered out. They would sell it to other companies. So that with that carbon they could like make diamonds, make pencils and everything. And it's quite interesting.
It sounds like something you could get in trouble with Tiffany's making diamonds out of carbon.
Well, they're actually doing it. Like they compress carbon like really hard with some special machines, and it's actually cheaper, and it's good for the environment in the long run because it's also it stops like conflict diamonds, which helps countries in Africa to like for example Congo, which there is blood diamonds every time
Yeah,
there's
but
wars
the
waged.
diamond industry or the diamond companies, they're like Tiffany's, for example, they're
Yeah,
not gonna like this at all because they're on purpose withholding a lot of diamonds to decrease supply
yeah.
and like keeping the prices inflated for diamonds.
But they're gonna have to change. They're gonna have to evolve if they want to survive in this business. And obviously,
There's
it's
not
not.
much to change, man. Like it's
Yeah,
if a third party just suddenly makes like the diamond supply increased, and that's their whole business. Like they're gonna do anything to keep that from happening.
Yeah, they'll probably like announce against it, say that it's probably like very cheap and right now this these people that have been starting, like doing these these compressed diamonds and everything, obviously it's cheaper because it's cheaper to do and cheaper to extract and everything. And then they it's probably they're gonna probably say that it's better worse quality, but right now it's not too famous. But I'm sure
One thing,
that if I ever buy a diamond, I'll do it from them. Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I agree. I wouldn't prefer to buy a diamond from, from Tiffany's, for example, because I know that you're basically getting ripped off pretty hard because they're just keeping the prices up for their profits. But there's one thing I wanted to talk about specifically in during this session, and that is solar power. I feel that during the past years, solar power hasn't been embraced enough, to be honest. For example, I was in Spain a few months ago, and I'm surprised by how little solar power you guys are using. Like nothing. In Sweden, you can nowadays find roofs based solely like just solar power roofs. But Spain is, the perfect environment. Especially I was in Palma, and this is like the perfect environment for solar power because even during the winter, you can get a tan like in February, which is like completely impossible in Sweden. So I've been talking to some Spanish people, and I've been trying to figure out like why does nobody use solar power in Spain?
Because the government actually was pushing against it because
Why?
of some lobbying. They kind of the energy companies that they were selling natural gas and petrol and everything. They were pushing against solar power, so they made it kind of like illegal, or like it's legal to have a solar power. You can buy a solar panel and put it on your roof and everything. A lot of houses in the south of Spain, they actually do have it, but you couldn't keep it. You couldn't sell it back to the companies. You actually had to pay for it. Because companies that were making money from you buying their energy, they're not making money from you buying their energy, so you have to kind of pay them to use their electrical grid or something like that. So it was much cheaper and it much cleaner, obviously, but you still had to pay something. And you couldn't use it like guard it, like like keep it in batteries or anything, because these batteries were deemed too dangerous, because they could blow up, or they could like short circuit or something like that, and fuck up the entire power grid for your house or for the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
But that's obviously a lot of lobbying, and I guess in the US is the same thing is happening. But now obviously the president has seen that they have to do something about it, so now they're building much more of these things. In Madrid, they're actually pushing for energetic solutions. Newer buildings are being built to have the highest grade of being energetically efficient, and they're also gonna have solar panels and everything. And actually there was a huge investment in aeolic power here in Spain, and actually the Canary Islands, the islands that are next to Africa, and to the east of Africa, sorry, or the west of Africa, they are actually thriving by themselves on aeolic, like wind power. So
it's pretty cool.
It's
Solar City, the newly acquired company by Elon Musk. Well, they've been the acquisition happened quite a long time ago now, I think, but they had a deal with the island of Hawaii, and they're building like a power plant now to completely power the whole island just on solar power.
Yeah. I mean,
Pretty
what
pretty good
was
stuff.
there was actually a few places that managed to go a few small countries that managed to go completely on clean power. Even I think Germany managed to go for like an
I
entire
think
day
Sweden
without
is in the
using.
forefront of this, actually.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, because you guys have a lot of wind power in the sea and everything, right?
Yeah.
You can.
There's a company called Vattenfall, which means like waterfall.
Yeah,
And yeah, they're getting the job done pretty hard with water energy. How would you phrase that?
yeah,
Uh,
hydroelectric energy, no, something like that.
Hydroelectric energy. Cool. Yeah. So I think, like it's still very diversified. The amount, like where we where we get our energy, it's still like hydroelectric energy and wind, solar energy, wind energy. Um, and yeah, there's so many different right now. But I definitely see, considering like Palma, for example, like the whole islands of Mallorca. I think they're like the perfect location to be completely like independent and can 100% use solar
Totally.
energy. And I think it's kind of a scandal that like the Spanish people doesn't acknowledge the fact that the companies are lobbying the politicians in order not to use solar power. I think it's kind of sad. I really think that this should have been more focused on in the news.
But now, I mean, now they are doing actually, they're actually doing something about it now that, and even for example, Spain has been, like talking a lot with France and with Portugal too, because they acknowledge their possibilities in terms of clean energy, and they're actually selling clean energy to other countries. We started selling clean energy in terms of hydroelectric power, wind power, solar power, a lot of we have like all these possibilities, and we still use like petrol,
Mm.
which sucks. But now we're moving towards being more energetically independent and clean as well. Even
Yeah.
the main petrol companies here in Spain, Repsol, for example, they're moving towards uh, alternative energies because they know that obviously at some point they're gonna have to be like 100% clean, non-petrol and stuff like that. Maybe they'll do PVC and like road paving and everything, but that's pretty much it.
It's
I
kind of
mean,
cool, right? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matthias.
yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, like go back on the topic of Trump leaving the Paris Agreement. I mean,
Yeah,
this is exactly, and your example, Alonso, with the fossil fuel companies or like the petrol companies. I mean, they also realize that this is a finite product that they're selling. It's gonna run out, so they have to, move into areas where they will be more sustainable in future. And Trump's action is just really displaying a very short-term vision, how he's trying to save and develop jobs in areas which shouldn't see growth in the long term or won't see growth in the long term.
yeah,
If you understand what I mean, if this
totally.
makes any sense.
Yeah, I
So
Actually,
understand.
he was actually open to like talk again about this agreement,
renegotiate the
renegotiate the
situation.
agreement. Yeah, but it's crazy because they're not obliged by law to do it, even though they signed the
Exactly.
agreement.
It's just a partnership. It's
Yeah,
it's not legally binding at all, this agreement, They just as a community came together and sat down and said and looked at the facts. I mean, it's a gigantic blow to many areas anyways that Trump made this step. I mean, like so many millions and billions have been invested to prove actually that there is global warming. And what is all this research for if the US is not recognizing the facts? You understand what I mean? All this
yeah,
effort that has been put in to research climate change has come to a point where you just ask yourself, for what? Are we just going to sit here and do nothing about it while we know that there's a global warming?
yeah, yeah. But I
And
mean,
they're,
it's actually very scary. And people are scared. People who all of this information now, it's impossible to ignore it. And I think
Yeah,
people are scared,
exactly.
and they're asking their politicians, or they're asking for politicians that will, acknowledge this and try to move towards a solution.
I mean, you're completely right, and that's why we can also see that, for example, the mayor of New York, De Blasio, or even Boston and California, they themselves want to adhere to the Paris Agreement, despite Trump wanting to, or like leaving it. So
Hmm.
just that they have the reason, that this is the correct way to go, and this act of Trump also brings in a whole other factor, because the US was actually leading with Obama the whole climate change process in promoting renewable energies and having this world leader position. Trump has also given up this position with this move, if you realize it,
Yeah.
and has given, for example, the chance for Europe, but especially for China, to advance into even a more important role within the world order.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think this move has really reshaped the political landscape internationally and also like locally. I mean, it's crazy
For
what this
sure.
move
I mean,
made.
actually, I think I think that Trump decided to do this because he wasn't managing to get anywhere with his political agenda, and he said, well, this is the only way of getting people to say, hey, I'm actually doing something. I think he was getting
I mean,
nervous in that sense.
there are a few reasons why, like in the short run, boosting the coal industry would create more jobs, and in the long run, the renewable energy sector is employing already much more people.
Yeah.
And there's also a factor that we have not to forget. These areas that are still big in coal mining are like the Midwest, like Wyoming, and they actually helped Trump win the election. So
Mm.
he is also obliged to those companies in a way, to guarantee, because the coal mining industry and the coal energy sector has plummeted in the last few years. So this is probably a promise that Trump made to these states, and the states that back up Trump, and might ensure his re-election in 2020, that he's making this move. And we also have to remind ourselves that Trump, when he did win his election, say America first, and this is again a move just showing he really just cares about the states, and it's only about the United States, not the world anymore.
Yeah. So in this sense, even if it's good for the world in a sort of way, even if also it's good for the United States, but he basically doesn't want to be involved with anything outside of the United States, which I think the next president is gonna have a lot of work getting back into the into this kind of relation with the rest of the world. But I mean, in the end, he's also still bombing, Syria and all of that. So it's kind of strange.
It is very strange. Like his actions don't follow, I would say, a certain line that would pinpoint or like give us an idea what he wants to achieve with the relationship with other countries. It
Yeah.
really just looks like for now that he's just trying to put everything in front, like over others, pushing others away just for the greater good of the United States. But like I think he should also start realizing that his way of leading is very short term and it's very not sustainable. I mean, as you say correctly, Alonso, should he not be re-elected in 2020, the next president who's going to take over, who's not going to follow his footsteps, will have to do a lot of cleaning. And it seems like that under Trump, like international efforts are coming to a halt. And I don't think this is the way to move forward, as we're on the world altogether. And especially for a country like the United States, with their influence, they shouldn't be taking the position that they're taking right now.
Well, that's something to bear in mind, Matthias, and I hope that you're right in that for the future we will all come together in and fighting against the destruction of the world. We will even be socially and politically more connected with our neighbors and in the world. So let's see what happens. Adam, do you want to say anything about this?
Not really, to be honest. I think it's all very cryptic. There's so many hidden agendas. I don't know. I'm not sure why Donald Trump is doing what he's doing. I think very few people understand what's going on with his foreign policy changes. It's
Yeah.
not really sure what to add, to be honest.
Yeah, we can all agree that there's no logic in his actions. Well,
I mean, you can't say there's no logic, but like on an international basis, he's really just moving away from America as a leading country and really just focusing more on what the US can benefit from ever.
yeah. Well, I
It's
think
really isolating.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think
please.
it's better. It's better that countries that are more, let's say, involved in you know, environmental and social things, you know, social situations and events, that they start leading more the world towards a cleaner future, a cleaner, brighter future, you know? Like before it was the US, and obviously everything that the US said was everything everyone followed, but now Europe as a kind of like a coalition of countries that are more, you know, focused on, you know, clean energy and social advancements and everything. I think it's a good move for the world. It's in a sort of way Trump has done something good. What do you guys think?
Can you like explain one more time why he did something good for the world?
Because because you know, he kind of moved away from leading the world in a path, and that allows the EU and China to move the world to you know, kind of push the world towards a cleaner and better future, you know. Now
Yeah,
we
but the
don't have
problem is, you know, the US is still amongst the biggest polluters
yeah.
on this planet after China. So, you know, without the joint effort of these big players, I mean, it already took so much effort to bring China and the US to make them sign the treaty last year. You know, keep in mind this was just signed in 2016 and Trump is already leaving it again. I mean, it's a completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous.
I don't like the approach of Donald Trump. Like he's kind of has this very aggressive and conflicting way of like handling all the other countries, and I think the relationships between like the EU countries and the Asian countries and the American countries, they're all kind of sensitive, and I think his way of interacting with other countries is a bit too hostile, and I think it too easily. This is kind of a small topic, but it kind of damages years of work just by being, you know, a bit too aggressive.
You are completely right. This is a very important point. And I think, Alonso, I mean, you studied how people react and act. I mean, I think Trump is a fantastic businessman, but this is the only skill he has. For me, being a politician is being a very complete person in all the terms in life. You have to have charisma and the ability to converse with people on a very different level. You know, doing business is one side of being a really good politician, especially a president. And Trump is lacking, you know, how he presents himself, you know, just from this, judging from this, apparently lacking some of the skills needed to be a bit more sensitive in areas that need, you know, the sensitivity, you know, especially in politics. You can't be, or you shouldn't be this direct on an international stage, you know.
Yeah.
I think he's neglecting the fact that it's not just the US.
But let's say that the US finance department, they've been working together with the Italian finance department for years, and they're working on, let's say, Proposition X. And yeah, they, as I said, they've been doing this for many years, and they're finally able like to come to sort of a conclusion. And all that's required, and this is just an example, not based on anything that's going on right now. Um, and all that's required is that Donald Trump, he just Twitter something, and that just completely ruins like years of work that nobody are really like no like it's not really famous in the media, but like smaller departments have been working on this for a longer period of time, and Donald Trump just ruins it by just saying something.
Exactly. You're completely right.
I think other countries and other departments that have been working hard on this, I think they are aware of the fact that Trump is who he is, and obviously this doesn't take away all those years of work. I think the Italians in this
Yeah,
example.
but it causes uncertainty. Like
It
like
causes uncertainty, and that's what I'm also said. Like it looks like that a lot of efforts that have been achieved over many years are coming to a halt just because of this.
Yeah.
Of this short-term vision, or whatever you want to call it.
But
of this isolated.
Yeah, no.
Please, Alonso. Yeah.
No, because there's going to be the elections in Congress now. Well, in like 1 year or 2 years, or a year and a half. So we'll be able to stop if this, if people realize that this man's actions are troublesome for the country and for future deals with other countries from outside the U.S. You can vote for a majority of Democrats or non-Republicans in Congress that will even actually some Republicans in Congress are not backing some of the president's decisions. So obviously if it's not backed by Congress, then he can't do anything. That's why he hasn't been able to do anything, because all of these decisions, not even the Republicans are backing it. And maybe in 2 years, when if there's Congress elections every 2 years, so if they choose for a more democratic thing, they're probably going to veto every decision that Trump takes. So it will be kind of interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, you're right. And talking about elections, shall we move to the next topic?
Well, we can talk a bit now about a bit about the British election that's happening on the 8th of June. So by the 8th of June, we will know if Theresa May in the Conservative Party or what was his name already? Sorry. Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour Party, and we will see who wins.
Labour Party.
Yeah, we will see who wins, or what will be the results. So there's actually UKIP, which is also which is kind of aligned with the Labour Party, no? Yeah.
No idea.
Well, anyways,
what?
Because we will see who aligns with who after these elections. But actually, right now we've been seeing some statistics, and they're saying that it's going to be kind of 50-50 for Corbyn and May. So
yeah, exactly. So basically, on April 18th, Theresa May actually called for an election to solidify her backing in the House of Commons. And looking back then, she was approximately like 20 percent points ahead, which would have risen her 17 seats to 150 seats. That's like a really massive increase, and would have like basically really set the stage for her to lead the Brexit negotiations. But like the closer we get to the actual election, this 20% has dwindled down to a single-digit percentage point, which is really scary. And there are even polls that would suggest that she might even lose a few seats for next week.
That would obviously put her in a very difficult situation, especially in the negotiations, and especially she's been saying, like for example, after the she hasn't been very like continuous in what she says. You know, she says that she doesn't promise that she will be able to maintain the taxes, or that she won't put them up or whatever. You know, and she's like very inconclusive with her promises, which is obviously people are losing their faith in her. So
Yeah, the thing is, in the end, Theresa May does bring a much longer last political experience to the table, and she is, out of these two candidates, probably the better person, or the more capable person, let's put it like this, to discuss in the name of the UK for the Brexit terms. And Corbyn in the end is still a very unpopular person amongst the UK. So, but it's right, Theresa May is just putting too much on this card, that she's saying that she has more experience, which is in the end true. But you're also right that she has been, a bit not that consequent in a few areas that would have, brought more trust, I guess, to the people.
So we can say that Theresa maybe will win the election.
Exactly. Good one.
Oh, but it's I think it's going to be interesting to see. Do you guys have any bets on how it's going to end up being?
I think it will be a really close call. I mean, there are like 650 seats, if I'm not wrong, in the House of Commons.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, a lot of polling companies say that it's going to be a 50-50, but that the difference is going to be really minuscule. I think Theresa May is still going to make it and get a slight majority. Obviously, she needs 326 out of the 650 to have a majority. I think she's going to achieve it, but it's going to be a tight one.
Yeah, I think she will have to call for early elections again then, to see maybe if she gains more trust.
No, but like we also have to keep in mind they only have a 2-year window since she handed in the official exit form to the EU, and the time is ticking.
Yeah.
After these 2 years, the negotiation period is over. So
whatever goes,
it has
goes.
to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
How about you guys? What do you think? How is it gonna play out?
I actually have a question for you. Like, what would it mean economically if one or the other wins, or even if Theresa May loses seats?
The problem is if Theresa May loses seats, her backing in the House is gonna be extremely weakened, because like then she can't have the certainty that whatever she proposes will get accepted immediately. I think it will just ultimately slow down the process massively.
And get a worse negotiation.
Because even though there are different agendas, even within the Labour Party or the Conservatives, having the opposing party having the majority within the House will even mean a bigger challenge in the negotiations.
Yeah.
So obviously, having the majority from her party, the Conservatives, is really key for the upcoming months and years for the Brexit discussions.
Yeah. What do you think, Adam?
What do I think? I think the polling is completely impossible, because they were expecting her to win by a landslide a few months ago, right?
Yeah.
But now
exactly.
it's 50-50. So who knows what's going to happen? Maybe she's going to win, maybe she's going to lose. It all depends on economic variables and political variables that are impossible to predict. But as it seems right now, I completely agree with Matthias. Probably going to be a close one if things keep going as they are right now.
I also think she's going to win, but by a really close call.
And historically, Alonso, you've been right. So
exactly.
So actually, she. I mean, I think also the terrorist attacks and everything have been weakening her position as well, making her look weak and everything. She just says whatever. But I wanted to know, how would this affect the markets, the financial markets? Because conservatives, like, actually we haven't had much of a chance to look at her program. But I don't know if you know about it, Matthias, a bit.
No, unfortunately, I haven't had the time to look into it very deeply, but like we can arrange it for an upcoming session to
Yeah.
have a better look at this.
Well, by next week we will, after we know who won, these elections will be on Thursday. So after we know who won, we could look into how what it could mean in terms of Brexit and UK's economy. In talking about UK's economy, actually, we will talk about the British Airways cabin crew going on strike. So, you're actually being affected personally, no, Matthias?
That is correct, because I will be flying on that weekend with BA, and I've been trying to find some information how is this gonna play out. And so basically, yeah, the whole cabin crew is going on a strike, which is completely unnecessary. Sorry, also stated by BA themselves. But yeah, I don't know if you have more information on it, Alonso.
Well, I mean, after they have lost they are predicting a 100 million euros loss after the cancelled flights fiasco about the last week, actually. So now the flight attendants are like actually protesting for bigger wages, and they are, which is kind of understandable, because unions have been fighting for bigger wages for these people. I don't know.
And just when they're about to make a loss, they're starting to protest, right? When they're about to make that 100 million euro loss, like the protest comes.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's actually, this is going to affect, like, it's a whole weekend. It's going to be like, we could assume that it could be like another 100 million euro loss for the people that
How's the
would be
stock
flying.
price been affected by this?
I have no idea. Do you want to take a look at it and tell us a bit?
Yeah, so British Airways merged with Iberia in 2011, and they created IAG, which stands for International Airlines Group. And since the news of the strike just recently came out, we're gonna see on Monday, because the stock market is closed right now because it's a weekend, right? So we'll see tomorrow how it's gonna react. But we can all assume that it's most likely gonna go down.
Yeah, I mean, after this fiasco with the IT system, it's probably gonna be like a mix of things, and a lot of people are gonna lose their trust in the airline.
Well, no, I just read again that the BA spokesman said, as on the previous dates when the Unite called the strikes, they will still fly all the customers to their destination. So that's all right.
I mean,
so
I guess
if this is true,
yeah, sorry.
If this is true, I think they won't jeopardize operations that severely. Hopefully, otherwise you're right. If they're not able to perform well due to the strike, I mean, after the blow with the fiasco with the IT system, this will be another gigantic setback.
I think there will be minimal services. I guess there will be a few flight attendants working that day.
Exactly.
They'll reach like a minimal percentage of people working, and you will probably have a very bad time flying that week. So you can tell us actually how it went for you. Or not.
Exactly, I will. Don't worry.
So yeah, so that's the thing. You're gonna have to be prepared, Matthias. And I'm glad that you found out about this information before before actually going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Today we have a bit of a special. We're going to talk a bit about Bitcoin. Adam has been looking for some cool information, and we're actually going to be able to throw a bunch of questions towards his way. Right, Adam?
Yes.
So it's
So
gonna...
I just wanted to give our listeners kind of, if they're not familiar with Bitcoin, I think most people kind of understand what Bitcoins is. They've heard about it many times and they're kind of familiar with it. But actually, like I want to talk about, do we and do other people think that Bitcoin is going to be kind of a real investment and a real currency in the future? Because it's been seen as very not serious. But I like the historical data tells us that actually Bitcoin has been amazing if you've been an investor in Bitcoin. So let's say that, for example, in 2010, if you invested in Bitcoin by then, like the price of every Bitcoin was $0.05. Do you guys know what the price of one Bitcoin is right now? Almost 7 years ago, the price was $0.05. Can you guys guess what the price of one Bitcoin is as of May?
I don't
2000, 2,250.
Wow, that's a really good guess.
He actually looked it.
I actually informed myself.
Okay, cool.
I didn't know actually. I was actually looking for like 200 or something like that.
Massive leap.
That's
So yeah,
massive
$2,420.
Fuck.
That is some pretty phenomenal returns. And if you would have invested like 1,000, I'm quoting this from The Economist, by the way. If you would have invested $1,000 in Bitcoins in 2010, you would have made $46 million by now.
Wow.
Fantastic, guys.
Wow.
So yeah, that's some pretty juicy returns, right?
Wow, that's actually amazing. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, and the initial investment is nothing, man.
And how did it get to that? Like, it's just from, like the price going up from people asking for more money, for more Bitcoin? And how is it regulated? I mean, do you know?
That's the thing about Bitcoin. It's not regulated. There's no. They have this hard-coded like inflation thing going on in the original algorithm, but that's the thing about Bitcoin. It cannot be regulated by anybody. It's completely regulated by the markets itself. So that's the cool thing about it.
So it's
and that's why
it's protected from inflation then.
Yeah, they have this. This is very technical, and very few people understand this, I think. But yeah, they have this inflation protection algorithm inside of the Bitcoin. Don't ask me any more about that because that's all I know.
Well, it's good to know that exists, but where does it come from, Bitcoin? I mean, was it created by the Japanese or someone? It was created by a Japanese guy, right? Or Chinese guy?
Yeah, it was created by a Japanese guy. At least his name was Japanese. I'm not sure if he was from the US or not.
How is it controlled? I mean, not controlled, not regulated, but in a sense, in a sort of way, like, who controls how much Bitcoins there are and everything?
The initial algorithm controls it. So it's... they say by 2018, I think, 80% of all Bitcoin is going to be mined already.
Yeah,
like that. Like you're mining Bitcoins using like CPUs and stuff like that. You're, you're adding into the algorithm's work, and in return you get Bitcoins. And why I want to talk about this right now is because the time horizon when we can actually kind of invest in Bitcoin and know that there's, like the supply is kind of going to increase in the future, but soon it's gonna stay. Like we're gonna have a limited amount of Bitcoins in the system. So we're kind of like at the end of the interesting phase of Bitcoin, and later on it's gonna be kind of the price of Bitcoin and the future of Bitcoin is gonna be decided by what, like how useful is it going to be, and it's kind of been proven useful. So I think it's
Wow.
very interesting. Would you guys ever buy Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, depending, I really didn't know much about it, but from what you're saying, I would before this last point that you're talking about, before it becomes completely uncontrollable.
Well,
No, but like the problem is already one Bitcoin is already worth more than $2,000. Like the gigantic jump that we saw in the last few days. I mean, there were always moments where Bitcoin crashed again, and this is the risk about it. We have no visibility on the structure of this currency, which makes it a kind of a gamble maybe to start buying now.
it's
Obviously,
100% gamble.
exactly. Okay. So basically, right now, at this stage, it's a no for me, 100%. I mean, if it will ever drop again to a more reasonable level, and this, maybe. How about you, Adam?
I'm very risk
Would you
averse when it comes.
join
Like the history speaks for itself. Like making that, like investing 7 years ago, investing $1,000 and gaining $46 million in return. Like that is one of the most phenomenal returns I've seen ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm so sad on missing out on that. Like that's, but it's understandable because when Bitcoin was introduced, like it was seen as kind of a scam, and it's still is kind of seen as a scam.
Yeah.
So it's completely
You're
understandable
completely right.
that I as like 15-year-old or no 17-year-old, like I didn't go for it. But I don't know, like I don't have that much money to invest in something like that. I don't think I would invest in it. But if I would have been older, then I might have went for it if I had the money to spare, because I kind of believe the idea of having an unregulated currency. I think that's pretty cool.
For sure. Man, it's actually crazy. And well, for example, what will happen when all of it is mined, when all of the Bitcoin is mined, and there's no more Bitcoins to be acquired, and now the only way to acquire them is to buy them from somebody who already has them?
Good question. I have no idea.
I mean, because then it will become unpredictable. It will it will just be controlled by the regular market. So all of a sudden one day someone is going to sell 2 million Bitcoins and somebody's going to buy 50,000 Bitcoins that same day. So the price is going to go down a lot, and then a lot of people are going to be buying off all this Bitcoin, and then and then the price will go up again, and then a lot of people will be selling again, and so it'll just enter the main habit of the market, and then it'll just become another thing, another asset.
I agree with that. Yeah, like exactly. Yes. So I believe the strength of Bitcoin lies in its ability to not be controlled by anybody, and its secrecy, and like its ability to kind of like steer around regulations. Like for example, when Chinese investors here in China, they were trying to smuggle out, like China is currently bleeding money, like they're completely like hemorrhaging money right now because so many Chinese people are bringing the Chinese yuan outside of China, and one way of doing this is by using Bitcoins. So it has its lucrative purposes, and as long as like they have, like, this is like the purpose of Bitcoin, like it's using it kind of like in this gray zone area, and I think there's always kind of gonna be a demand for this. So we'll have to see. I have no idea like what's gonna happen when the Bitcoins are all mined out. I think that's gonna have a negative impact on Bitcoin, because then it's gonna feel like normal investors are gonna feel like the growth phase is over, and the position of Bitcoin is going to be solidified. There's no more excitement anymore. But that's just me. I might be wrong about this, but I would guess that it's gonna stagnate as soon as it's 100% mined out.
We'll have to
How
see
will
then.
we know when it's but how will we know when it's 100% mined out?
You should. Good question. I think. So they say, like, the people that created it, they say by 2018 it's gonna be 80% mined out, and then from there, the mining phase is just gonna grow exponentially slower.
But I mean, the value of Bitcoin will explode until this point. Isn't that right? Because there's less there and demand is still there. So supply and demand. And this is free moving without any control.
That's, like that's the basic economic theory, but it's
Exactly.
more complicated than this. But yeah, it's good that you mentioned that. So if the supply, like exponentially decreases, then yeah, you're right. Like maybe the price should increase. But who knows? Like that's just one of the variables that controls the price of Bitcoin. And it's kind of it can be relevant, but it can also be irrelevant. It's impossible to say. Like for example, like the decrease in growth, it might be a smaller variable than, let's say, that increased regulations in the EU zone. If you have an increase in the regulations, let's say that you cannot, for example, exchange euros for USD. This would be like a crazy regulation, right? But this would increase the value of Bitcoins most likely, and that's gonna, that's gonna be a stronger variable than, let's say, the decrease in growth in Bitcoins.
Yeah.
So it all depends. It all depends.
I think, yeah, I guess, I mean, there's obviously a lot of variables that will probably change, but as it stands, your prediction is that it's going to continue growing. The price is going to continue growing a bit more until it's completely mined out, right?
Yeah, that's my guess, and I think that the perfect investor for Bitcoin is people in developing countries that are not sure what's going to happen with the domestic currency, and they want to diversify to a global asset. Because let's say that you're in Indonesia, for example, and you don't know what's going to happen, but you're making tons of money, and you want to be able to move your assets globally. Then you can allocate some of your capital to Bitcoins, because that's going to be viable anywhere. So I'm not sure if I would see Bitcoin as an investment, more like a tool to move your assets globally. So, like it kind of defeats its own purpose as an investment. Do you guys know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's
So
eventually. I mean, as it's if the moment it's completely mined out, do you think it will become like a regular asset, just like gold or
No.
some risk-averse assets, like, I don't know.
No, I don't think so. Because the thing about Bitcoin is that, gold, nobody kind of people can actually control, like how gold moves. Like the Chinese government, they purchased like so much gold recently, not because they wanted to control the prices of gold, but just because they have so much money that they don't know what to purchase anymore. And like I don't think a country is ever going to purchase Bitcoins, or I'm not going to say ever, that's stupid, but in the near future, I cannot see how any government is going to purchase Bitcoin like they would purchase gold, because they don't have the need for a global, uncontrollable currency. This is more going to be dodgy investors that wants to, allocate their resources around.
Maybe it's Bitcoin is the first phase of controlling the economy, basing the economy on the value of whatever assets they have in that moment. Like when we used to use gold to base on the currency that we have, so gold used to be the base of the economy of a country. So according to how much gold they had, the currency of that country was X. The currency value of that country was X according to how much of that currency there is and everything. So could you see it becoming a digital landmark for the country's value?
I don't think so.
So do you think we moved
I'm not
away
sure.
from that as a
I'm
society?
trying to remember a specific term when it comes to money right now. Because the cool thing about Bitcoin is that unlike a physical commodity, it's completely, the value is completely decided by people. It doesn't have any real benefit at all.
Yeah. Well, I think
So
I don't know.
you can,
My conclusions from what you said is that it's good for the moment, and then but we still it's still in that point where we don't know what will happen with it. It's not that easy to kind of predict its movements, and so it would be quite risky to invest in it in the long term. However, in the short term, we may see some returns, right?
like I hear you. I think you're wrong. In the long term, that's what you should aim for. You shouldn't aim for this in the short term. Either you allocate, in my opinion, a very small amount of capital, like a few thousand, and you'll see what happens with it in the long term, like you just did in 2010.
Yeah.
Allocate $1,000 and see what happens 7 years from now. So, like there might be a massive need for an unregulated currency, like in the regions, like in the Southeast Asia region, in the Middle East, in Africa. When the middle class and the upper class, they see a sudden increase in their wealth, they might want to move that currency to Europe, and the medium of exchange is Bitcoin. So, the more I talk about this, the more I feel that it could be viable, but we'll have to see. And this is not, the value of Bitcoin is not going to be determined anytime soon. We're talking many years from now. We're going to see the end result.
Yeah.
But I think this is kind of the way where the global economy is headed. It's headed towards an unregulated currency that, because we've seen that, like if you guys have ever taken a class like in economic history, the more freer the market, kind of the more productive it gets. So when you have super regulated markets, it usually doesn't end very well. And I think Bitcoin, it kind of like symbolizes, like the market, it controls the Bitcoin, and the government doesn't control the Bitcoin. So in a way, Bitcoin is kind of the future of our financial system.
Yeah.
But it's still very risky.
It's going to be interesting to see how it'll happen. But
Yeah.
it's actually been very interesting what you've been telling us, Adam. It's given
Yeah,
me,
really insane.
it's been giving me some very like interesting ideas about Bitcoin, and obviously it's changed my ideas a lot of what it really was at the beginning. It was, for me, it was this like kind of digital currency, and that was all. That was it. Like it's worth buying like dollars or whatever. But you gave me a very good insight. Do you have anything to add?
I want to give one last example to really solidify like the purpose of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So Alonso, let's say that you're in Spain right now, and Spain is currently experiencing a very bad economy. It's going very badly, and the
always.
government decides. But worse than I think Spain is still doing okay. It's not that bad.
So then?
And the government decides that they're gonna stop all transactions, all like outward transactions in Spain.
Yeah.
And the house prices are decreasing, and the CPI is increasing. It's getting super expensive, but nobody has any cash, nobody has liquidity, and because the Spanish government put a block on inward and outward trading, there's no movement. This is like the financial crisis all over again, but 10x. But then you realize that 5 years ago you invested in Bitcoin, and the volatility of Bitcoin now doesn't really matter. Let's say that you made 50% return on that investment, but that doesn't matter. You want to move to another country, but the euro has completely depreciated. It's not worth anything anymore, and you cannot sell off your assets domestically anymore. So your way, your only way of doing this is by liquidizing your assets in Bitcoin and exchanging them for, let's say, the Chinese yuan.
Yeah.
That would be a really good way out of a really shitty situation using Bitcoin. And that's not that's just considering the Bitcoin like its uses and not, you know, seeing it as an investment. So that's the way how I see Bitcoin.
So it's yeah, well, it's a very good thing to have as a kind of protection.
A little
as
backup.
Well, no? Yeah,
a little backup.
Or to, you know, as a regular investment. So it serves a lot of purposes then, Bitcoin. So obviously it serves as something like not to put all your cards in the same deck, right?
Yeah. If you have €1 million, why not throw in €1,000 into Bitcoin and see what happens? You know.
Yeah. If you have €1 million.
Yeah, if you have, like, that's kind of the situation where I would
enough.
imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like if you have $1 million, you can even throw a little bit more in it, you know.
Or let's say that, for example, here's another use.
You could
let's
throw
say that
all that
abroad.
million into something else, like, I don't know, a castle in Austria, right?
Yeah, we're talking like if you have €1 million, then you would throw in €1,000 into Bitcoins. But let me give you guys another use. So let's say that you're traveling with your family in, let's say, Burundi, Southern Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you become kidnapped. Like I don't know, like a small number of kidnappers go into your hotel and they take your family. And one way of getting out of that situation could be, you know, Bitcoins. Just paying them off using Bitcoins. That's going to be way less of a hassle. So you know, like it provides global, like, liquidity. That's the cool thing. Global liquidity. Like, I really want to stress that word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Access from anywhere.
So that's a kind of like forex trading, no?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think I've mentioned everything I wanted to say about this topic.
Matthias,
Thank
do
you, fantastic.
Do you have anything to say about this topic?
I mean, thank you very much. Been super informative, and I think you've shed some more light on Bitcoin. Which
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Please continue.
Who's this guy?
Yeah.
I basically shed some light on a topic that, or at least I did not have that much knowledge on. And you've like showed some great aspects, and also the risks, you know, attached to a currency that is free floating. I think you have for sure like increased my interest in maybe considering a small investment into Bitcoin when it's obviously a bit less expensive then, if it will ever drop.
We'll see what happens.
Exactly. Yeah, super. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much, guys, then. So, this is all for today in economic news. Thanks for listening, and you will be able to read everything we talked about using the links in the description down below.
No, guys, this is the best one. Alonso taps the girl on the shoulder and asks, what's the time? You know, she said, what do you mean, what's the time? Then he pulls out his dick and puts it over his watch. It's cock o'clock.